Okay, let's get started. Again, hello everyone. This is Miriam Gilbert here for today's webinar on how to double performance in your purposeful business. Now, you are a purposeful business if you believe what you do is important, and if you want to make a difference, and if you have a passion for your business, if you believe that your organization stands for something important, and if you believe that your success should be measured by the impact that you make. Now, there are more and more purposeful businesses growing around the world, and that's great. And these businesses, they're trying to make a difference in the industry and society. But doing that can be really tough. As a purposeful business, you're trying to balance achieving commercial success and fulfilling your greater purpose. And that might be making your customers' lives really better or being a great place for your employees to work. And might be about doing the right thing for the community where you're based and for the society as a whole. Now, I'm sure that sometimes you feel torn because it's a tough gig, and some of it goes against the old business wisdom that success is all about maximizing profits at all costs. So you're possibly left wondering if there really is a way of doing both, being a purposeful business and being commercially successful. And that's where this work comes in. It's for you if you're a busy director or manager of a large team or department who really wants to do things differently. It's particularly if you worry that your team's not performing the way they should, or maybe they're missing the targets, or maybe your star players are leaving. And if you've tried to increase performance in various ways in the past, didn't have quite the success you were looking for, or maybe you simply think that it's time to step up to a higher level, then this webinar is really designed for you. In my 19 years as a professional consultant, I have worked with a large range of businesses, small and big, from all kinds of industries. See, I trained with PricewaterhouseCoopers as a business advisor, and that education was really excellent in many ways, and I got to work in lots and lots of different businesses. At the same time, this education was also quite old school because there was always the assumption that there's only one right way to operate a business. But, you know, when I went to all my clients' businesses, what I saw there was quite disheartening because the vast majority of people in those client businesses, they were fairly dissatisfied with their jobs. In fact, they were really unhappy, even if these were really quite good jobs. So I particularly remember one very bright and experienced lady at a client where I worked for 3 years. Now this lady, she complained about her job every day I saw her. Every day for 3 years. And then my assignment finished. And she was neither particularly negative or the exception. In fact, these kind of feelings and attitudes are so common among employees that studies of the last 30 years have shown that on average, 70 to 80% of employees are disengaged at work. These are studies of thousands of organizations across the globe. And researchers such as Gallup, McKinsey, Tow Watson, Gensler, they all keep finding the same thing. The majority of employees are not interested in what they do. And that leads to another thing I've always noticed when I was working with client businesses at the time, is that the performance in those businesses wasn't that great either, even though people often work very long hours. All in all, it always appeared to me like a huge waste of human potential. At the same time, you know, I wondered sometimes if I was being naive or not professional enough, thinking that should be a different way. And that continued until one day when I got a new client. That was a small software company. And you have to remember, these were the days of the dot-com boom, the late 1990s. This business had grown rapidly from 4 people to over 80 in a really short time. But what struck me was the atmosphere in the offices, because these people, they worked really hard, long hours, and they had to deal with a lot of stress and uncertainty all the time. Yet, it was the funnest place to be. people seemed genuinely to be enjoying the work. It really felt like magic, and who worked like magic too. Because look at their impressive growth rate and the bottom line results. So what's more, they also seem to be doing things really differently. They seem to have thrown away the rule book of business. They had flat management, straight reporting lines. People could just pipe up if they had a good idea. Now, some people might argue this type of management only works in a particular industry, i.e. tech industry. But at the time, I got really determined to find ways to apply that approach to other teams and clients too. And so, over time, I started to put things together, creating a framework of insights and tools and techniques that proved successful in the field. And I started seeing some unusual results. And I was starting to get highly positive feedback from unexpected sources because I managed to create improvements that far exceeded the initial brief. And what was the most exciting thing for me was that we could create some real positive, sustainable change without the major pain of big change programs or culture change initiatives or any other disruptive initiative. So I'm really excited to be sharing these experiences and practical tools with you today. My passion is to help and reassure you as a purposeful business leader that yes, it is possible to create remarkable commercial success and serve your business purpose. You don't have to choose between business survival and being a mindful, purposeful, and happy business. This call is going to show you the foundational processes for creating high-performing teams and businesses that deliver the kind of results that you're looking for while still staying true and pursuing your business purpose. And that will mean higher productivity, more revenue, achieving targets, but also more importantly, being happier places to work, being more fulfilling places, and being more purposeful places. I hope that sounds good to you. And as we go through the call, you might hear some things which you think are common sense. And that's great. So we're going to show you how to do something really uncommonly effective with it. We'll also provide a fresh perspective that shows why past performance improvement efforts might not have worked. So you might hear some things that seem really unfamiliar or counterintuitive. And I challenge you, if you want to make real, sustainable, positive change in your organization, then follow along with this webinar, come along on this journey, and see how all the pieces fall into place. And then finally, a common reaction of my clients is to say, yes, Miriam, these tools and techniques sound great, but it would never work in my business. If you find yourself thinking this at any point, I want you to write down the exact bit that you think would not work, because I'd love to show you later how other businesses in the same situation as you have successfully applied these tools and created really fantastic results. So let me just talk about some of the things that we're going to cover on today's webinar. What we'll examine are the real sources of creativity, productivity, performance, and resilience in successful businesses, and how you can tap into those very same sources that are working miracles in the likes of Google and Netflix, Johnson & Johnson, Virgin, Nordstrom, Patagonia, John Lewis, Whole Foods, and so many others. We'll also look at what common business practices are used, those practices used by organizations around the world that actually undermine top performance, and how you can do things differently. And we'll investigate the secret forces that often pull against your earnest efforts to improve and how you can overcome them. And in the end, I'll share with you an opportunity how you can explore your specific situation in more detail and get great clarity around what you need to do next. Now, how to give your business the best chance for success. Because we'll start off with a tiny little bit of a history lesson. The Standard & Poor's Index of companies, that is reserved for only very successful organizations, you have to meet a lot of criteria to be included in that group. Getting into the Standard & Poor's Index of 500 is really not easy. And half a century ago, if you managed to be included in that illustrious group, chances were that your company had a life expectancy of around 75 years. Now, fast forward to today, and that average life expectancy of companies in the same index is 15 years, and it's declining. Wow. We're really living in a fast-moving world. And no organization is safe. Because if you look at these stats, between 2008 and 2014, 13 million jobs were lost in the SME sector. And there were 1 million established businesses folding in that period. So how can you operate in that kind of environment? Think about it. Now, some organizations manage to do really well in that environment. And they do this by managing themselves very differently. Instead of focusing exclusively on things like strategy, efficiency, cost control, they go upstream to the sources of success. They know that great strategies are produced by people who are engaged in their work. And they know that costs will be controlled if employees feel they have a stake in the organization and that their actions matter. And they know that things like innovation and great products come when people in organizations are growing and changing and taking on new challenges and learning new skills, entertaining new ideas. So with these organizations, when they say that the people are the greatest assets, they don't pay lip service, they mean it. Now, I hope you're all excited to hear exactly what these organizations do. And it's so simple that it's often ignored as soft or fluffy. Because what these organizations do is they focus on happiness. Now, I don't mean the innate kind of think positive or let's pretend everything is fine kind of happiness. No, what they do is they focus on creating a baseline experience of positive emotions for their employees and a positive mood in the present and positive outlook for the future. And it makes them really, really successful. So for example, Pret a Manger, you know, the sandwich chain, they attribute their 14% growth in annual growth just down to positive, happy employees. And similarly, there is HLC, which is a leading IT service company in India that had 24% annual compound growth. That is absolutely smashing the industry. And they, again, claim this is down to keeping their employees happy. But it's not just lucky for these organizations. Research across the globe has shown that happy organizations are somewhat 300% more successful than others. They are because they're more resilient and they attract great people. They retain these people. They create more innovative ideas. And importantly, they're not just successful for themselves and their shareholders, but their people and the society that they're part of. Now, this flies into the face of conventional wisdom, because surely happiness follows success. That's what we're always taught, isn't it? And also, does happiness have any place in business? I mean, it is work after all. Well, as it turns out, brains that are primed for happiness perform much better than those that are under stress. Because when a brain is under stress, it behaves the same way as it behaves when it's under a mortal threat, like a saber-toothed tiger attacking you. And what the brain does, it becomes super focused on escaping the situation, fight or flight. And that is great when you're running away from a saber-toothed tiger. But it's not so good for things like planning or creating smart strategies, for remembering important facts, building relationships, and for creative thinking. Yet these are all essential for business success in the modern world. Happy brains, on the other hand, are better even at saving lives. Sean Aker, he's a former Harvard professor and consultant. He describes this experiment in his fantastic book, The Happiness Advantage. Strongly recommend. In this experiment, a group of doctors were primed to be in a positive mood by being given a lollipop. Now, when these diagnosis, they were twice as fast at making the correct diagnosis than your neutral peer. Twice as fast, even though they did not get to eat the sweet. That's amazing, isn't it? So it wasn't the sugar rush, it was just the fact that they felt positive. Now, just imagine what your business could do if everyone felt positive about it. What could they achieve? Now, at this point, you'd be forgiven to react like one of my clients in a large professional institute recently. Because he said to me, Miriam, said, I do care about people. I really do care. But I'm not their babysitter. I'm not responsible for their happiness, no matter how much I want the best for them. And you know what? I think that is a fair point. In fact, I would urge you never, ever, ever think of that you should be their babysitter. Because after all, you or someone in your organization has hired these people exactly because they're adults. And they're probably hired because you believe them to be capable, reliable, trustworthy, intelligent. I mean, if you don't believe these things to be true for your people, you do have a bigger problem. And come and speak to me after the webinar if that's the case. But let's assume that you do believe your employees to be all those things. If so, there's absolutely no need for anyone to make them happy. You can, and you should, however, ensure that they can work in an environment that doesn't promote negativity. And by that I mean both the physical and the non-physical work environment. Because we tend to focus much of our time on finding faults, overcoming weaknesses. There's been very little effort on looking for positives or celebrating the small things that go well. And that means we're depriving our brains of very important positivity nourishment. And our performance suffers. So for you to start doing something different and promoting more positivity in your business, here's a little exercise that you can start doing straight away. The simplest way you can promote happiness in your organization is to adopt regular happiness routines. I'll give you an example. Ovision, it's a Japanese telecoms company. They hold daily team meetings where the team members share something good or something new, either from their work or their personal life or from national interest. It doesn't matter what the source is, but it's something good or something new, and that is to prime everyone's brain with a positive mood. In the pack that I will send out after the webinar, you'll find some more ideas on how to establish happiness routines. Now, we talked about that happiness plays a critical role in business, and that it really is important to make an organization successful. And let me repeat, we're not looking for blind optimism. What we're looking for is realistic positivity. And that means happiness alone is not enough. Because, of course, you need things like a great product or service, and you need the right strategy, be in the right places, you need good marketing, and you need good internal processes to make your business efficient and effective. And without these things, even the happiest place will struggle to be profitable. And in order to get those things in place, you need something else. Any guesses? Yep, that's right. You need people. You need people who are skilled and experienced. But the question is, where do you find them? So many businesses complain about not having the right people, despite their efforts to recruit. But in my personal experience, the issues that my clients are facing are frequently not down to a lack of skills or experience of the staff. It's down to something else. And this is where we start talking about the pillars that really build success for your business. Now, the pillars for success, they're not really rocket science new because we're talking about motivation and engagement. Because great strategies and great product promotions, they're all created by people who are motivated and engaged. And yes, they need skills and they need experience, but I hired people who are smart, skilled, and have experience. I mean, that is the reason why you've hired them, isn't it? And you will never get top performance from them if your team is not engaged and motivated. You don't need to be a rocket scientist to know that this is true. What's surprising, though, is that it appears to be even beyond a rocket scientist to translate this knowledge that we all intuitively know into business environments. Because guess what? The vast majority of organizations, the vast majority of companies around the world, they do it wrong. In fact, they do it so wrong that they actually undermine performance. How come? Well, let's start off with motivation. Most of us have been brought up with a carrot and stick approach to motivation. And that is, if you work hard, you get the promotion. If you achieve your targets, you get a bonus. In school, if you study hard, you get good grades. Even small children, when we're small children, we're told, eat up, or we won't get dessert. But anyone who has a small child knows that this kind of approach only gets you so far. You still have the epic struggle to get spinach down your toddler. The carrot and stick approach is taught in most business schools around the world. And the problem is that this approach assumes that we humans are rational, that when we have all the necessary information, humans will make decisions that are in their self-interest to maximize their wealth. And if we think that's true, then of course we must create rewards and punishments in a way that makes it in our people's best interest to behave the way we want them to be. The problem is, people are not rational, self-interested, wealth-maximizing beings. And this has been proven by science over a long period, with experiments going all the way back to the 1940s. And yet, it's been soundly ignored by most businesses all this time. Just look at this. Even though in 2002, David Kahneman became the first psychologist who won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his empirical finding that challenges the notion of the rational human behavior. Basically, it says, no, humans don't always behave in a rational manner. Yet, most businesses still insist to manage and control themselves using a carrot and stick approach. And the results are not very impressive, are they? Just look at what happens with bonuses in banking and in other industries. Let's just wait what comes out of the Volkswagen scandal. I bet there is a carrot and stick in there somewhere. And this is because it's exactly the wrong approach. The carrot and stick method relies on something called extrinsic motivation. Extrinsic motivation is created by desire for external, tangible outcomes and rewards, such as money, power, prestige, or to avoid a negative consequence, like not getting dessert when you're a child. However, extrinsic motivation is not the only kind of motivation, and it's actually not the most powerful one. Much more powerful is something called intrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is the desire to seek out new things and to challenge, to learn and observe, to gain knowledge. It's driven by an interest or enjoyment in the task itself, and it exists within the individual. So for example, coming back to the small children, they are intrinsically motivated to learn. And have you ever met a toddler who's not curious and excited about exploring everything? It's a natural human trait, and it helps us to survive. Scientists have long recognized the importance of intrinsic motivation. In the 1970s, Mark Lepper, David Green, and Richard Nisbet conducted a classic study on preschoolers who like to draw. They divided those kids into 3 groups. In the first group, kids, they were told that if they drew, they get a reward, a nice blue ribbon with a name on it. And the second group wasn't told about a reward, but they were given a blue ribbon after drawing. You call them the unexpected reward group. And then finally, the last group, they weren't given an award at all. They weren't told about it, and they weren't given anything. So after 2 weeks of running this experiment, the scientists observed the 3 groups of children again. And here is where results get really interesting, because the kids who weren't given a reward for drawing and the kids who were given an unexpected award for drawing, they kept on drawing with the same passion and same enthusiasm as before. Their behavior was completely unchanged. Yet, in contrast, the kids in the award group were the ones that had been given that nice blue ribbon. They showed much less interest in the activity. They preferred to go off and play with blocks or even take a nap. And that reason was that their intrinsic motivation to draw had been contaminated by blue ribbon. The extrinsic reward had diminished the pleasure of playing with crayons and paper. It had become work for them. Now, this doesn't only go for children. When adult participants in a variation of that same experiment were offered large rewards equivalent 5 months worth of pay for completing a range of tasks that included things that needed creativity and concentration and motor skills, those people who were offered large rewards performed half as well as their peers that were offered very small rewards. Can you imagine that? You offer people more money and they perform less well. Now, hundreds of variations of this experiment have been run around the world in all kinds of situations, taking people from all kinds of backgrounds, and the results have been conclusively the same. When you introduce extrinsic, tangible rewards, intrinsic motivation goes down. And that matters in business because intrinsic motivation outperforms extrinsic motivation. This research shows that individuals and teams who are focused on extrinsic motivators produce lower results, show less ingenuity and commitment, and are willing to give up earlier than the intrinsically motivated peers. So we're talking about a real differentiator here. A focus on extrinsic motivators even linked to unethical behavior. So I'll give you an example. The US conglomerate Sears, they have a auto repair section, and they started imposing sales quota on their staff there. And the workers responded by overcharging customers and completing unnecessary repairs. Enron, do you remember Enron? Well, it set very lofty revenue goals and incentivized their people to achieve them. And in that race to meet these goals, people took any route, any means possible, and that contributed directly to the company's collapse. As I mentioned the VW scandal already, I'm sure we will find similar reasons in there. Now, much of this research has been summarized in Daniel Pink's amazing book, Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us, which is another one I strongly recommend you have a look at. A quick word of caution. Of course, I'm not saying that you can ignore extrinsic motivators completely. To start with, people need to get paid, and they need to be paid fairly for their work, in line with their industry peers elsewhere. By that I mean salaries and perks, everything that establishes a kind of baseline for fair. Because if what you offer your employees is below such a baseline, you get no kind of motivation. So even if intrinsic motivation exists with them, perceived unfairness will undermine this over time. However, once you meet the baseline, too strong a focus on extrinsic motivators generally has the impact of undermining intrinsic motivation. Okay, so what kind of things build intrinsic motivation at work? Here are 5 specific intrinsic motivators that have the most impact. First, we have autonomy, I control. how much control people have over their work. And autonomy in the workplace exists in a continuum. There's no single right or wrong answer. However, if you want to build intrinsic motivation, start giving your people more autonomy. Work with them to find out what would mean more autonomy to them. Secondly, mastery. I improve. Getting better at things is satisfying for people and satisfying for employees, and that works again on a number of levels. For some, it means the job gets easier, and for others, it's about doing something that couldn't be done before, that no one else can do. Then we have purpose. This is very important, of course. I make a difference. Everyone needs to feel like they're making a difference and that their efforts and accomplishments have meaning. And that might mean that you have to be spelled out how they contribute. Progress is about I achieve, because people respond well when they see that they are making progress in something they care about. And lastly, mustn't forget social interaction. I connect with others. Humans are innately social creatures, and we want to connect and interact. We want to affiliate, care, and share. We want to be recognized, and we want to understand and be understood. So how can you turn these insights into something that you can use to raise performance in your business? And this is the point where we start talking about combining this learning about motivation with really practical steps to build employee engagement. There's a quick word of warning. There are no cookie-cutter solutions to employee engagement. For example, in recent years, many organizations have tried to find solutions in initiatives such as gamification or technology tools such as collaboration platforms. And that doesn't work. The solution has to be very personal, very specific to your organization. Just to prove the point, the McKinsey, the consultancy, estimate that around 80% of such technology initiatives will fail. So really not time and effort well spent. Secondly, let me clear up some confusion around employee engagement, because motivation and engagement are not the same. You can have highly motivated people who are still not engaged in the work. And here, think of the example of people in education or the caring professions. Most of them have really high level of intrinsic motivation for their job. For example, they like caring for people or developing young minds. However, a huge number of those people do not feel engaged in their actual employment situation. And that might mean because of too much bureaucracy or poor working conditions. Doesn't matter, because the result is that large numbers are motivated but not engaged. And that leads to people leaving those professions. Similarly, you can have employees situationally engaged, i.e. they like the benefits for working for the company, but they're not really motivated by their work. And these people, who are the majority in most businesses, they will do just as much as they need to do to stay employed, but no more. So employee engagement is the outcome of a two-way activity where the needs of both parties, the employer and the employee, are met in some form of compromise. And that goes beyond what motivates the individual. On the one-sided employee engagement initiatives, where the employer leads gamification or installs a foosball table or a slide in the office, they rarely work because they focus on extrinsic motivators, and often they also ignore the hidden dynamics and cultures that play a powerful role in all organizations. But let's come back. I promised you to talk about how you can build employee engagement. You start off with a meaningful purpose. Building engagement and intrinsic motivation needs to come from all areas of the organization, especially line managers. And it starts off with spelling out the meaningful purpose for the organization from all, and that needs to be done by all parts. Now, as a purposeful organization, you should be well versed with that message. You should know what it's about. But ask yourself, How much time do you spend on promoting it internally? How much time do you spend of explaining or working out with your staff of how they contribute to that purpose? How everybody's contribution leads directly to achieving the business purpose. The second bit to build intrinsic motivation is about building it into management training and executive coaching. Remember, I said it needs to come from all levels. Well, actually, managers often find intrinsic motivation is really important for themselves, but they often underestimate how important it is for other people. They think other people are motivated by extrinsic motivators, such as rewards or time off or other things like that. So if they are to spread the message and if they are to apply intrinsic motivators, they need to learn and understand more about it. Very important point to employee engagement is about engaging the middle. Remember, we said around 70 to 80% of people are disengaged. And of that, there are actually around 20% that are actively disengaged. Now, there's this lovely analogy by Mark C. Crowley that goes like this. Imagine you have a 10-man rowing boat going out for practice on a cold and frosty morning. In that boat, you have 3 people who are rowing their socks off. These are the engaged people. You then have 5 people who take in the scenery. You know, they're taking it easy, and they're the famous middle. And then you have 2 people who are actually drilling holes in the boat. Conventional wisdom is to focus on those 2. And of course, you can't let them sink the boat. But I really urge you, pay special attention to building intrinsic motivation for the middle, because that's a large group who will give you a lot of return for your efforts. If you're able to move their intrinsic motivation up a few notches, they've combined with the people who are already highly engaged, and that forms a large majority of energized people, critical mass needed for high performance. So really, really do pay attention to the middle. Don't go with Jack Welch's idea of only paying attention to the top and getting rid of everybody else. Very important as well is to measure the levels of intrinsic motivation and engagement in the organization. Without it, you'll be flying blind. Now, this is important because there is no absolute level of engagement. It's a journey, it's a progress, and you want to understand if you're on the right path or not. There are many tools and techniques, but you actually don't need to get very technical. After the webinar and the pack that I'll send out, I'll share with you a simple 20-question tool that you can use to measure the baseline and then measure your improvements over time. Putting these building blocks about employee engagement and your understanding of intrinsic motivation in place, that will definitely raise motivation and engagement in the organization. And you start seeing a buzz around the office. People start talking more to each other, collaborate, sharing ideas. And of course, this will lead to increasing performance. Because intrinsic motivation and engagement are so crucial to business success, and especially in purposeful businesses, that you really ignore them at your own peril. But I'm often asked, where should I start? And people in my business don't like change. So in the next section, we look at the myth around change and how you get from this isn't how we do things to excitement and enthusiasm to making changes needed. And at the end of the webinar, I'll also offer you a complimentary opportunity to get up close and personal with your specific situation to create real clarity on what you need to do and what needs to happen next. So stick around. We talked about why baseline of positivity is important and how you can create it in your business. And then we covered some surprising insight about motivation and how traditional approaches actually undermine performance and what you can do differently. But let's not stop here, because to make fundamental, positive, long-lasting improvement, you need to do things differently. And that means going from theory to making changes in practice. Yep, that's the word, change. You need changes in actions, changes in behavior, changes in attitudes. And of course, such change doesn't happen by itself, and it's rarely done by one person. And let's be frank, it's rarely smooth sailing. Now, having been involved in change initiatives for over 15 years, I've seen plenty of diagrams that depict change as something like the top line, step 1, step 2, step 3, and yippee, change achieved. Or sometimes it's circular, where you go through and provide feedback. And the second one is better than the first depiction, but my reality has often been more like this. Now, we're all taught that people hate change, that they will resist it at all costs, that they can change will take a long time and it'll be painful, and that's just the nature of human beings. But actually, I don't buy into that. I've personally helped create changes in the way people behave and how they perform in a matter of weeks or months. And I really don't believe it's a nature of people to hate and resist change. Just think of that. How many of us go away regularly on holidays? We go to different countries. We actively seek change, changing scenery, culture, behavior, food. We're even willing to bear the pain of being confined in cattle class on airplanes in pursuit of that change. That doesn't sound very resisting to me. In my experience, what's going on is this. People don't like change imposed on them. And because human behavior is made up of layers, we need to appeal to all the parts, to all the layers. Now, we've already discussed that human behavior is not always rational or logic driven, so emotions are important, but we mustn't forget the logic either. And then there is a third part. We appeal to logic and we appeal to emotion, but there's something else that we really need to do if we want to make a change. And that something else is clearing the jungle. I've got this analogy from the brilliant book called Switch, which is by Dan and Chip Heath, because they use the analogy of a rider on an elephant thrashing through the jungle. The rider is a logical self of people who needs to understand whys and hows of change. And then we have the elephant, who is very powerful, of course, and it represents the emotional side. And the rider can try to pull the reins of the elephant, but if the elephant doesn't want to go a certain way, there's nothing they can really do about it. But then there is the jungle itself as well. And if there's an obstacle in the jungle, the elephant can't go that way. The jungle represents the organizational ecosystem. That's all the structures and procedures and strategies, measures, reporting lines, cultures, history, everything else that makes up the totality of your organization. All these things together, they create the environment where behaviors are played out, where decisions are made, where actions are taken. And that's a problem with many culture change initiatives, because often they focus on changing attitudes and behaviors, but they don't look at the systemic issues. For example, what success measures are used, or how does information flow, what are the authority lines? They often ignore the informal organization within the organization and the hidden rules. Now, I've mentioned the informal organization and hidden rules, so let's have a quick look at what that is about. And all our lives are governed by rules. Some are official written rules, such as laws or the known etiquettes, accepted customs. And some are less obvious, unwritten rules. You know, when you just know how to behave, like if you're on the London Underground, don't make eye contact. Organizations have these unwritten rules too, and they run the informal organization, which is all the unofficial networks and community substructures that sit below the neat official structure. These are the kind of things that you would tell a friend who starts working in your business, but not necessarily you tell your boss about them. And there's some things you need to appreciate about these hidden rules. To start with, in a specific ecosystem, they are actually a very sensible way for people to behave. So, for example, if your promotion and or bonuses are dependent on achieving certain targets, smoothing the path to achieving these targets is a very sensible way to do. Sensible thing to do. And secondly, the hidden rules, they're not inherently bad or good. They're just either helpful or not helpful, depending on your goals. And they can often be in conflict with the official goals. That's where the problem arises. Because the unwritten rules, such as, oh, don't bring any bad news to the boss, they cause unhelpful behaviors and unhelpful decisions to be made. Let me give you an example. One example that many people will be familiar with. It's so familiar to people that they might even call it a official rule. Now, I've worked with many organizations to help them improve their business planning and budgeting. And invariably, what I find is when it comes to the annual budgeting process, we have this scenario. Finance department issues templates to budget holders, and these budget holders fill in the templates in some form and send them back to the finance team. The finance team then collates the numbers and starts challenging them. And so we start a long-winded dance of back and forth until some compromise is found. This takes up a lot of time and effort. You might say, okay, that's a price you've got to pay for avoiding strict top-down management. But here's the thing. Pretty much all the budget holders will admit that the first set of numbers they submit are not the ones they really want. They know they'll be challenged and cut. So they inflate them. Similarly, the finance team will admit that they had a number in mind from the beginning, and that the challenge part is often more about proving that they, the finance team, add value. This adding value is really important to them because it's in the job description, and they need to prove it in their annual appraisal that they have indeed added value to the business. And this causes this long dance. It sounds like madness. It's not very productive, yet it is conducted by businesses around the world, wasting millions in time and effort. There are other ways to do this, and I'm chuffed to say that I've helped businesses to take on these unwritten rules in those cases and make effective changes to their approach. So, in summary, investigating the hidden rules in your organization, that explains how failures are often caused by seemingly unrelated written rules, processes, and management behavior. On the positive side, mastering the hidden rules also lets you decode success in your business and then get more of it. So in summary, there are 4 key elements to making change successful. First of all, appeal to logic. Of course, treat people like adults, give them the reasons. Also, appeal to their emotions, not just what's in for them, but how does it contribute to the purpose? How is it good for whatever they care about? Then clear the path. Make sure there are not systemic issues that will undermine your efforts. And finally, understand the hidden rules. Now, in my in-person seminars, I can generally see people nodding in agreement at this point. So it seems like common sense. And that's also how I know that there'll be at least some of you who wonder how on earth they can go into the office tomorrow and initiate whatever changes they needed to get there. Particularly, they worry how to overcome resistance. So for the last few minutes, the last part, I quickly outline some of my favorite techniques to overcome such resistance. The first of all, this is a much underused yet really super effective approach. It's great whenever people say, it'll never work. When you're trying to create a change and people resist it because they just don't believe it can work, you can do this. You can start conducting a series of small, inexpensive experiments, a prototype of the change. This is best done by gathering a band of enthusiasts and let them play and make the change. This is not about making a big song and dance about it. Because it's play, no one can take it too serious and no one can lose faith. Because it's a prototype, they can make tweaks when setbacks occur. And because it's small, there are no great expenses incurred, either in time or in money. Such experiments can be done as workshops, as online sessions, even breakfast meetings can be adopted. And conducting such experiments allow you to create bright spot solutions that are homegrown, that can be shared with the skeptics and decoded to scale to other parts. In my pack that I've mentioned a few times now, that I'll send after, I'll give you a little roadmap on how to prototype change. On the other hand, when you are on the way to change, but your initiative loses momentum, there are some a great little technique that again works. But first of all, you need to be prepared to accept that change initiatives are not always smooth sailing, and it is important to help your people understand that by honestly talking about it. But from the moment you start a change initiative, try to build in habits that help making the desired behavior easier than anything else. Because habits that way can be our friends. They make change more sticky. Let me give you an example. You know, in many organizations, a lot of people communicate by email, even if the recipient of that email sits just a few desks or corridors away. And don't get me wrong, I like emails. They're very useful in certain situations. However, we would all agree, I believe, to say that not all emails are useful and that in many cases it's not the best way of communication. So how to stop people emailing when they should instead have a chat? There's a simple trick I saw used at a client, and this was that every time somebody wrote an email to somebody else who was located near them, before they could send this email, a pop-up window would appear. So you would type in an email to a person who sits next to you. The system knows that that person is next to you because they logged in. And if you try to send that email, this pop-up window appears and it would ask you, do you really need to send this email? And you have to type a quick answer. And that fact by itself, not the fact that anybody looked at these answers, but the fact that you had to type an answer, it made it so much more painful to send emails all the time that guess what? People got up from their seats and started to walk over to the other person and talk. And in pretty short time, it became a habit among the team. And that started to spill over into other areas too, resulting in better communication and collaboration across the team and across the organization. Oh, and then they stopped the pop-up as well, but the habit was formed. So, let me briefly summarize the 5 things we covered that you can do to improve performance in your purposeful business. First, promote happiness as a baseline mood by installing happiness routines. Secondly, review how you do motivation in your organization. Conduct a survey and go over the building blocks to identify and fill any gaps. Then learn about the hidden rules of the informal organization in your business. What drives staff behavior? Assess where these hidden rules get in conflict with what you really want. And then, finally, use the techniques to overcome resistance to change. Use prototypes and build habits of change. Now, this brings us to the end of the webinar, and I promised to you an opportunity to explore your very own specific situation in more detail, and here it is. If you got a lot from this webinar, I would love to continue to give you more individual support on your path to improve performance. And the next step I recommend for you is to sign up for a one-to-one complimentary session with me to create breakthrough in your purposeful business. And in this session, You'll create crystal clear vision for the results you want, how you want your team to behave, interact, and collaborate. And specifically, we'll look at where the gaps are in what you have now and what you need to do best. We'll look at the hidden dynamics that are sabotaging your efforts and identify the most powerful action that will move your team and your business forward. I promise you, you'll leave the session feeling energized and excited with the knowledge that you know exactly what to do next to build a powerful, creative, and results-driven team. That session takes around 45 to 60 minutes, and if you want to take advantage of this opportunity, I would like you to hop through to my website at www.coincidentity.co.uk/book BPB. That's /book BPB, and you'll find my sign-up page there to book a slot for the session right now. Alternatively, if you cannot find an appointment that suits you, please ping me an email at hello@coincidentity.co.uk or call me on 0783 40 58 240. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for attending the webinar today, and look out for the value pack that I will send out probably end of this week, starting early next week, with a recording of the webinar and all the other goodies that I mentioned. Thank you very much.